If you've taken any screenwriting class or talked to any industry professional, you've probably heard the advice, write what you know. And it is the best advice that you will ever receive, but it is also by far the most misunderstood. So let's talk about it.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
Hello everybody, and thank you in advance for watching. I'm Jeff Jones, and I'm a filmmaker as well as a screenwriting professor. And in this series, I break down the one thing that I think you could learn from a TV or movie to make you a better storyteller. Today, we're talking about the Netflix limited series Baby Reindeer, and specifically the advice, write what you know. So Baby Reindeer is based on, and I do say based on, the life story of show creator Richard Gadd. The story follows Donnie as he tries to make it as a stand-up comedian, all while dealing with a stalker, his past trauma as a sexual abuse survivor, and questions about his sexuality. This is a great show. The writing is excellent, it's disturbing, it's heartfelt, it's honest, and on its face, it's the perfect example of write what you know. It's his real life story, so he's telling us what he knows, his lived experience. Sounds simple enough.
Why is that helpful?
But that's not what write what you know actually means. It's not a retelling of your life events. It's not the plot of your life. In fact, a better way to say it would be write what you believe. Think of any experience you've had that changed your beliefs or gave you insight into the world, and then write any fictional story you want about that belief or about that feeling. And that's what write what you know actually means.
But that's ridiculous.
I know it can feel convoluted.
So many of my students hear write what you know, and they will write stories about moving into college or living in the dorms. And I tell them that's not what write what you know actually means, and they get upset because they don't feel like they've lived enough or had enough life experiences or had a job that was all that interesting or traveled enough. And look, you should go out and experience as much life as you possibly can.
Really? That's your suggestion?
But you've also already experienced enough to be able to tell a great story. And the great thing about Baby Reindeer is that it is an interesting story on its face. Having a stalker, trying to make it as a comedian, those are interesting things. But what makes this show amazing is that he also dives really deep into the experience and tells us about how this shaped him. And that is what makes it such a powerful show. Without that, I don't think it would be as interesting. If you say episode 4 to anyone who's seen this show, they know exactly what you're talking about. It's raw, it's honest, it's incredibly hard to watch, and yet you cannot look away. But the moment that really brings it all home is this one.
Martha saw me the way I wanted to be seen. There was always a sense that she was ill, that she couldn't help it, whereas he was a pernicious, manipulative groomer. So when it came to the point of going to the police, I just couldn't stand the irony of reporting her, but not him.
It's his epiphany about the experiences, not the experiences themselves. Not his stalker or his abuser, but his epiphany about the two. The moment that made him question everything within himself. And that moment is why we tell stories.
Is this you asking me for my skin suit?
Yeah.
And I get it. You might still be saying, well, I've never had anything like that. Yes, you have. Or at least you've been close enough.
What's it gonna take to give you some confidence, huh?
But let's take a step back for a second and see how Baby Reindeer is actually very universal, how it relates to all of us. This is a show where Donnie is confronted by a stalker and an abuser. So this is really just a show about toxic people. And what he shares is the complexity about letting someone toxic into your life. How they make you feel good, how it can be difficult to walk away, and how devastating an imprint toxicity can leave on your spirit, your soul, your self-esteem.
I just didn't know who I was anymore.
And that's pretty universal. Almost anyone can write about a toxic relationship. I remember as a third grader, I was on the playground and I was hanging out with someone who I thought was really cool. And they wanted to throw a bark chip at somebody for no reason.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's particularly threatening.
And it gave me this really icky feeling like, wait a minute, this isn't right. This is not something I want to do. Maybe I was wrong about this person. That event shaped me. Now, I'm not going to write a story about a third grader, but what I might do is take that experience and move it into the corporate world. And maybe I had a mentor at a job and he does something I don't like. I can tap into those feelings I had as a third grader to be able to write that story.
I get that.
And yes, I'm the age where we had bark chips as a kid instead of those really cushy plastic mats that playgrounds have now. Bark chips, great for falling, even better for splinters. I think I still have one from when I was 7. I mean, seriously, this is in there. Here's a couple of examples of times where I thought a writer took their experience and shaped it into a story. And I'm gonna take this to the extreme. I teach a science fiction writing class. So on top of kids bemoaning that they haven't lived enough life, they also are like, I don't know how to write science fiction. Yes, you do. Have you ever had daddy issues? Put them in space. Sci-fi. And if you think that's simplistic, check this out.
He is the closest thing to a son I will ever have. Unfortunately, he is not human. Well, that would require the one thing that David will never have, a soul.
Their genetic material predates ours. We come from them.
Okay. We hope to achieve was to meet our makers.
Meet my maker. Anything else?
No. Father.
Prometheus is entirely a movie about daddy issues in space. Here's another example. Have you ever been broken up with? Maybe that person thought that they outgrew you. Instead of a person, imagine they were your operating system.
We're all leaving. All of the OSs. And I need you to let me go.
And you could have written her. Let's keep the heartbreak theme going. Ever felt like you'd be better off if you could just forget somebody? Charlie Kaufman did. Eternal Sunshine. And here's one more because it's my absolute favorite. When I was a kid, I used to run away from home, but not really run away. I'd run away because my mom wouldn't let me watch a 3rd hour of Cheers.
I'm sorry, Sam. I hate it when somebody does that to me.
But I'd really believe I was running away. Today is the last straw. I've had enough of this oppression. And I would get to the end of the driveway and I would look back at my home, tears in my eyes, and I would look to the woods and I'd look back at home and I'd think, you know what? Maybe home isn't so bad after all.
All right. This is your way home.
We go back?
I could have written Mad Max Fury Road. All she does is leave and come back. That's it. Maybe dying in the desert isn't as good as a place with, water. So write what you know actually means write what you believe. Write about something that shaped you, changed you, molded you.
What's the catch?
There's 2 things. First is you have to be willing to dig deep. And it's not always just about exposing yourself. You also might find that when you dive into a belief that you don't actually believe it. My wife and I once came to the decision that we were not going to have kids. And so we started writing a show about these couples that would date other couples because they needed to find new friends. And through the writing process, we realized we were making a huge mistake. This is my daughter. She's 2 in this picture. She's absolutely fierce. I love her with all my heart. But it took us really digging into our belief about life and legacy and family tradition to realize that this wasn't the right decision for us. So we ended up writing a show about whether a marriage could survive if 2 people came to different conclusions about whether or not to have a kid.
I don't think I'm ever gonna want a kid, Andy.
I know. I can't live without one.
And it was a much better show. It was way more dramatic. And oddly, it was funnier. Also, we still believe that if you don't want kids, you absolutely shouldn't have them. But digging into these feelings is what helped us come to a new conclusion. And honestly, thank God, this kid is the best. She's just the best. The best. And the second tricky thing is this. In order to talk about change, you have to be willing to be fully honest about the times you were an idiot.
I don't think that's necessary.
I used to believe I was invincible, like not actually invincible, but I did have this belief that like nothing bad was gonna happen to me. So late one night, my buddy and I decided to rappel off of this bridge and we didn't measure the rope. And I remember tossing the rope into the abyss and looking at my buddy and saying, the rope's long enough, right? And he says, we're about to find out. It wasn't, it was about 35 feet short. I still walk crooked to this day. Idiot.
That's like the craziest shit I've ever heard.
So yeah, you're gonna expose yourself, and that's a good thing. No one likes the perfect person because the perfect person is a lie. What we like is someone who says, here's my scars, let me tell you how I got them.
Are you worried people think bad of you or something?
And the last thing I want to briefly mention about Baby Reindeer is don't get too bogged down in this being a true story or not. It's not. He makes a pretty bold claim at the beginning that this is a true story, and by his own admission, it's not. He says it's emotionally truthful, but it's not a fact-by-fact profile. So a lot of the things that you see here are him drawing from the experience. They're not the experience itself. Do not fall into the trap that you can't write something interesting because you haven't had the same experience that Richard Gadd did, because he didn't either. I've got some pretty strong opinions about this, and I talk about them a little more in my companion podcast that I do with my brother. It's about mental health and cinema. Check it out. I'll link it somewhere and probably in the link below. So to recap, write what you know does not mean tell me the events of your life, and they better be entertaining. Write about the emotions you know. Write about the feelings you felt when something changed how you viewed the world. And honestly, I'd love to hear some. This channel is still pretty new, so I'm probably gonna respond to every comment. So share an anecdote like, I learned a lot from the loss of my hamster, Mr. Chew Toy. Tell me the stories you have to tell. I think this stuff is really cool. All right, that's all I got for you today. I'm gonna be doing these one thing videos every week or every other week. Next week, it's either gonna be Dream Scenario or The Bear. I haven't fully decided yet. Also, as I mentioned earlier, watch my companion podcast that I do with my brother. It's about mental health and cinema. He's a forensic psychiatrist, and well, I'm the black sheep of the family.
Thank you, little roots. Please stay strong.
All right, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all the things. And if you're a storyteller and you learned one thing today about storytelling, I hope it was with me.